Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to break down a pretty incredible story, and we're going to do it slide by slide.
So think about this for a second. How do you teach a global language, like English, to millions of students, all at the same time? I mean, it's a huge question, right? Well, today we're going to look at exactly how one Indian state, Andhra Pradesh, decided to tackle this monumental challenge head-on.
Okay, so here's how we're going to break it all down. First, we'll look at the big question the state was asking itself. Then, we'll dive into the real-world challenges they were up against. After that, we'll see how they designed the solution, put it into action, and what kind of impact it actually had. And we'll wrap up with the big lesson this holds for education everywhere.
So, it all kicked off with this one central question. The government of Andhra Pradesh looked at their students and saw a huge opportunity, but also a big roadblock. They realized that without really solid English skills, specifically the kind you need to pass a major test like the TOEFL, their students were being held back from competing on a global stage.
And you know, this wasn't a problem you could solve by just buying some new textbooks. No, this called for a complete system overhaul. So they decided to partner up with an edtech company called Liquid to basically build a brand new solution from scratch.
Okay, but before you can dream up some amazing new solution, you've got to get your hands dirty, right? You have to understand the problems on the ground. You can't just sit in an office and guess. You need to know what teachers and students are actually facing day in and day out.
And what they found was that the biggest issue, really, was a massive lack of consistency. I mean, we're talking about a huge, diverse school system, and teachers were pretty much on their own, without the specific training or the right resources they needed to teach something as specialized as the TOEFL.
And if you break it down, it really wasn't just one thing. It was this whole cascade of problems. You had teachers who'd never gotten specialized training for this test. They were using outdated books that didn't even align with the curriculum. And on top of all that, the technology available could be completely different from one school to the next. It was a tough situation.
All right, so with a super clear picture of the problem, Liquid could finally start building. And they knew a simple one-size-fits-all solution just wasn't going to cut it. This had to be something comprehensive, something adaptive.
And here's where they had a really crucial insight. They realized that the success of this entire massive project hinged on one group of people: the teachers. So instead of just creating some tech and dropping it in a classroom, they decided to build the entire program around supporting and empowering the educators first. Teacher-centric. That was the key.
And this whole teacher-centric idea wasn't just a buzzword, it was a whole system. It started with really thorough training for the teachers. That training helped them do on-the-ground needs assessments in their own schools. The results from that shaped the custom content they developed. And the whole thing was wrapped in this continuous support network. It was a full circle.
What's really smart here is how flexible their content strategy was. They built a system that could work with literally whatever tech a school happened to have. Got fancy smart TVs? Great, here's some digital lessons. Only have a few old computers? No problem. Here are some interactive PDFs. No tech at all? Here are print workbooks. The point was making sure every single student had access.
Now, this might sound like a small detail, but it was an absolute game changer. They set up a dedicated WhatsApp group for all the teachers. And just like that, you break down the isolation. You create this incredible, vibrant community where educators from all over the state could share what was working, ask for help, and solve problems together, instantly.
Okay, so you can have the best strategy in the world, but if you don't execute it well, it's worth nothing. And this is where the team really shined. They put together this super methodical, three-phase plan to roll everything out.
And you can see how logical this is. Phase 1, pre-implementation, was all about getting the groundwork right, reviewing content, setting up monitoring. Phase 2, the actual implementation, was focused on training and getting the classes into the school schedules. And then, crucially, Phase 3 was all post-implementation, ongoing support, classroom visits, reporting, making sure the whole thing stuck.
And here is a fantastic example of that adaptability we were talking about. See, the original plan was to distribute materials on USB drives, but they pretty quickly realized that was a problem. Not every school had the right hardware. So what did they do? They pivoted. They switched to a simple, accessible PDF format that could run on pretty much any computer. So simple, but so smart.
So, after all that, the planning, the teacher focus, the smart pivots, we get to the big question. Did it actually work? Well, let's take a look at the results.
The feedback from the teachers was incredible. A whopping 94% of them said the content was well organized and easy to follow. When you're rolling something out on this scale, a number like that is just astounding.
And what about the training itself? Just as good. 90%, 9 out of 10 teachers found the training was directly applicable to their classrooms. So this wasn't just some abstract professional development. These were skills they could walk in and use the very next day.
So how did they manage to scale this so effectively? It started with a strong foundation. They trained 83 TOEFL coordinators, who basically became the champions of the program. They were the leaders, the mentors, the ones who would drive this thing forward across the state.
And from that core group of 83 leaders, the impact just exploded. Their work led to the delivery of 1,200 total learning periods across all those grades. Think about that scale. It's huge.
But, the impact wasn't just about the numbers on a chart. It was the human stuff, too. Teachers felt way more confident. That WhatsApp community we talked about, it was thriving. And the students, they were more engaged, more tuned in. And yeah, their listening and speaking skills actually got better. That's the real win. So when you step back and look at this whole story, what's the big takeaway? What's the lesson here for anyone trying to tackle a massive educational challenge?
I think it's this. Transformation on this kind of scale, it's actually possible. But it's not magic. It happens when you build your entire system around empowering teachers. It happens when you're flexible enough to change your plan when it hits reality. And it happens when you're laser-focused on solving the real problems people are facing every day.
And that really leaves us with a pretty powerful question to think about, doesn't it? If this model, this teacher-centric, adaptable, problem-focused model, worked for teaching English in one Indian state, what else could it do? What other huge educational challenges anywhere in the world could we solve with this same playbook? It really makes you think.